Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Today we're heading straight into California's shadow, where the sunshine hides some of the darkest nightmares. From cursed dams to creatures that scream across desert shores, these are four of the most disturbing true California horror stories. Real, haunting, and impossible to forget. But here's the strange part. Most people who watch never subscribe. It's like walking into a haunted house and leaving the door open behind you, so don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now and join the few brave souls who stick around for the creepiest stories on the internet. And tell me, where are you watching from today? What time is it there? Drop it in the comments below. Because here, the fear doesn't wait for nightfall. It starts right now. Let's dive into the darkness. There's a dirt road just outside Glenville, California, winding through cow pastures and forests of old pine that smell like rain and rot. If you ever find yourself out that way, don't drive it at night. The locals still call it Tolbert Road, though the county never changed the signs. It's not on the GPS, and folks say if you try to follow it on Google Maps, the app freezes or crashes, like something out there doesn't want to be found. But back in the summer of 1974, it was just another unremarkable back road in Kern County, a place where rusted-out tractors sat half swallowed by the earth and barbed wire fences leaned like drunks. That was the summer Sam Tolbert disappeared. He was 11 years old, skinny as a rake, with mop-like brown hair and a set of front teeth too big for his mouth. Sweet kid, people said. Shy, polite, liked old monster movies and building forts in the woods behind his family's house. One of those kids who seemed like he'd grow up to be a teacher, or maybe a mechanic who could fix your truck and not cheat you. On July 12th, around 6 in the evening, he was playing outside with his dog, Maggie. A neighbor saw him chasing the mutt toward the edge of the property, down by the rusted gate that opened onto the dirt road. Sam waved once, disappeared around the corner, and that was it. He didn't come home for dinner. By nightfall, his mother Mary was knocking on doors, shouting his name. His father, Don, who worked swing shifts at the mill in Bakersfield, drove home early when he heard the news. By midnight, they had deputies combing the woods with flashlights. The next morning brought volunteers, bloodhounds, and helicopters. The Army Reserve Unit from Fresno came down with ATVs and thermal scopes. For 2 solid weeks, the town of Glenville became one giant search party. They found Maggie on the 4th day, nearly 5 miles from home, panting and trembling under a collapsed fence near Dead Horse Creek. Her eyes were wide and white, and she had scratches on her nose like she'd been trying to dig her way out of something. But there was no sign of Sam. Then, just when everyone had quietly begun to accept, the boy was gone for good. He came walking back into town. It was early morning, August 2nd. The sun was just rising behind the mountains, and the world was bathed in that eerie pink glow that only happens in California summers. He walked right down Main Street barefoot, covered in dust, wearing the same jeans and Spider-Man t-shirt he'd been in when he disappeared. His feet were raw and cracked. His face was pale, his eyes blank, like glass, like he wasn't really seeing anything at all. He didn't speak, not to the gas station attendant who spotted him, not to the sheriff's deputy who came to pick him up, not even to Mary, who wept and held him in her arms, begging him to tell her where he'd been. They took him to the hospital, ran tests, dehydration, malnutrition, minor exposure, but no injuries, no bruises, no marks, not even bug bites. The strangest thing, the doctors said, was that his pupils didn't respond to light the way they should have. They were dilated, like he'd been in a pitch-black room for days. But his hearing was sharp. When someone dropped a metal tray across the room, he turned his head so fast it startled the nurse. He still wouldn't speak. Over the next few days, things only got stranger. Sam didn't eat, not even a bite. The food sat untouched on his tray. Pancakes, applesauce, Jell-O, even a cheeseburger brought in by his dad. He didn't drink either, and somehow, he didn't sleep. Not once. Nurses checked on him every hour. Sometimes he was standing by the window. Sometimes he was just sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. And always, his eyes were open. Not just open, but unblinking. Not once. The night nurse swore she stared at him for 2 straight hours, and his eyes never even watered. They sent him home after a week, though no one knew what to make of him. The doctors used phrases like catatonic behavior and temporary dissociation. The town used different words like possessed. Wrong. Not him. Mary knew it first. She told a neighbor in whispers that Sam didn't smell right. She said he smelled like wet dirt, like the kind of mud that clings to coffins after a heavy rain. And milk. Sour, curdled milk. She started locking her bedroom door at night. Said she'd wake up and find Sam, just standing in the hallway, staring at her through the crack under the door. She called Pastor Ellison, asked him to pray over the house. He came once, left pale-faced and tight-lipped, and never returned. Then came the 13th night. The morning of August 15th, Mary Tolbert was gone. The front door was wide open. Her purse and keys were still on the table. Her car was in the driveway. No signs of struggle, just gone, like she had stepped out of the world. The sheriff came. Deputies searched the property again. This time they found Sam in her bedroom, standing by the window. His mouth was full of something. Mud. Thick, wet clumps of it, pressed between his teeth and packed into the corners of his lips. It was on the carpet too. Mud and dead grass, and something that looked an awful lot like earthworms. They tried to arrest him, tried to cuff him, but the cuffs wouldn't stay on. Deputies swore the metal felt slick, almost alive, like it bent away from his skin. One snapped clean in half. Another slipped off like it was too big, even though it wasn't. Sam didn't resist, didn't move, just stood there with that blank stare. They took him to the county facility, moved him to a state hospital in Sacramento not long after, and he's been there ever since. He's 49 now. Doesn't speak, doesn't eat, doesn't blink. The staff gave up trying to feed him decades ago. He just sits there, pale as paper, eyes wide, hands folded in his lap like a child waiting for class to start. They tried placing cameras in his room once, state-mandated surveillance. The footage always came back warped, glitched, static, like something about Sam just didn't play well with electronics. Once a year, someone from Glenville drives out to check on him, usually one of the old deputies. They go in, sit for a few minutes, nod politely to the nurses, and drive home in silence. They never say much afterward, just shake their heads and sip their drinks a little slower. Back in Glenville, people still whisper about him, about what really happened in those woods. Some say he died, and something else came back in his place. Others say he went somewhere else, somewhere beneath the earth or beneath reality, and it changed him. There's even one theory, passed around by teens at parties, that he never left, that the real Sam is still buried somewhere off that dirt road, and what came back was just wearing his skin. But here's what I think. That road doesn't like to be walked alone. There's something old out there, older than the town, older than California, older than us. And maybe it doesn't always keep what it takes. Maybe sometimes it gives it back, but not whole, not right, not human. If you drive past that road today, you'll see a rotting sign with bullet holes and black spray paint. Most people don't even notice it, but if you stop, if you roll down your window, you might smell it. That stink of wet earth and spoiled milk. And if you wait long enough, sometimes, just before dawn, you'll see a boy in a Spider-Man shirt standing at the tree line, staring, not blinking. Not in the storybook sense, not in the way you say it at Halloween to give the kids a thrill. It's not haunted, not exactly. It's not some old Victorian house creaking with ghosts or a cemetery full of shadows. No, it's worse than that. Devil's Gate feels wrong. Even the name sounds like a warning, doesn't it? Like somebody once tried to tell us what was waiting there, and we just didn't listen. The dam sits just north of Pasadena, tucked in the Arroyo Seco, where the canyon grows narrow and the air gets strangely quiet. Built back in the 20s, it's this ugly slab of concrete wedged between sandstone cliffs that look like a screaming face if you catch it from the right angle. That's where the name came from. Some early settler thought the rock formation looked like the mouth of hell. The name stuck. Over time, so did the stories. People in Pasadena don't like talking about Devil's Gate much. Tourists go up there for hikes to take pictures, maybe smoke a little weed. But if you're from the area, if you were born here, you don't go down into the tunnels. You don't linger near the spillway after dark, and you sure as hell don't ask about the missing kids. It started slow, back in the 1950s. A little boy named Ray went missing on a family picnic. His mother said she only looked away for a second. He was playing near the water, just poking at bugs with a stick. When she turned back, he was gone. No splash, no scream, just gone. Search teams came, bloodhounds, helicopters, divers. They found nothing. Then came Melissa, then Jorge, then 2 sisters from Eagle Rock. All of them disappeared somewhere near the dam, always at dusk, always when the air got weird and still, like the whole world was holding its breath. By 1962, the locals were starting to whisper, and by 1970, they were convinced something was wrong. But no one wanted to say it too loud. Pasadena was respectable, clean, full of old money and rose gardens. The idea of some predator or portal or curse didn't fit the image. So the police kept the cases open but quiet. Missing persons files were quietly shelved. Parents learned to keep their kids close when they walked the trails. Teachers warned students not to go past the fences, but the kids talked. One boy, Darren M., told his 5th grade teacher that he saw red eyes in the tunnels, big ones, glowing like taillights in the dark. He said they followed him while he was riding his bike near the spillway. Said he heard whispering too, like voices under the water. His mom said he had a vivid imagination. The school counselor recommended less sugar and more sleep. But Darren never went near Devil's Gate again. He wasn't the only one. Between 1950 and 1987, 23 children disappeared in or near the Arroyo Seco. A few bodies turned up, always badly decomposed, sometimes half buried in the mud like something tried to return them and changed its mind. The rest were never found. And then, for reasons no one understood, the disappearances just stopped. Like whatever it was got full or bored. Until 2002. That's when a group of urban explorers, college kids with flashlights and digital cameras, decided to sneak into the sealed tunnels under the dam. It was supposed to be a thrill, a ghost hunt, maybe a little urban legend clout for their blog. They cut a hole in the fence, shimmied down the embankment, and crawled through one of the storm drains. What they found never made it to the blog. 2 of them dropped out of school within the month. One refused to talk about what happened, ever. The fourth gave an anonymous interview to a local paper, claiming they'd found a chamber deep underground, past rusted ladders and graffiti-covered corridors. In that chamber were bones, small bones, arranged in a circle around a half-melted doll head. Burn marks on the walls, symbols carved into the concrete, old ones, older than English, and something else, a light, red, pulsing, like a heartbeat. The story was dismissed, of course, a stunt, a hoax. The city sealed the tunnels for good a few weeks later, citing flood safety and trespassing concerns. But the security guards posted up at the site never stayed long. One of them was found sitting in his truck one morning, engine running, eyes wide open and completely unresponsive. He spent 3 weeks in the hospital and never returned to work. The official explanation? Exhaustion. Heat stroke. Nothing to see here. But the hikers know. The night walkers. The ones who've lingered just a little too long on the wrong trail, at the wrong time. They say if you're out there at twilight, and the wind dies down, and the birds go quiet, you'll feel it. A pressure in your ears, like being underwater. A taste in the back of your throat, like rust and dirt. Then you'll see them. 2 red lights in the shadows under the dam, like eyes, watching, not glowing, breathing. They pulse slowly, inhale, exhale, a rhythm you can feel in your bones. And if you stay too long, if you don't look away, you might hear something whisper your name. Not loud, not angry, just curious. Like whatever's been sleeping down there has finally noticed you. They blame Jack Parsons, of course. He built a test site for his rocket fuel near there in the 40s. They say he was trying to open a portal with some kind of ritual. The Babylon working, they call it. Aleister Crowley stuff. Sex magic. Blood. Fire. He blew himself up in his garage in '52. But the rumors say the portal worked. And it never closed. Maybe it was always open. The thing about Devil's Gate is, it doesn't chase you. It doesn't come howling in the night, or drag you down screaming. It waits. It watches. It breathes. And if you look long enough into that red pulsing light, if you listen too closely to the stillness, something might follow you home. Something that was always hungry. Something that doesn't believe in leaving bones behind anymore. In the heat of Southern California's inland empire, where the wind smells faintly of orange blossoms and old dirt, there's a part of Redlands the locals avoid after sunset. It's a place off San Timoteo Canyon Road, where rows of abandoned orange trees stretch for miles. The groves used to feed the town. Now they're overgrown and full of whispers. Back in the summer of 1998, a quiet 17-year-old girl named Marisol Camarena disappeared while riding her bike through those groves. She was a straight-A student at Redlands High, the kind of kid who stayed out of trouble. She lived with her mom, dad, and little brother in a modest house not far from the canyon. Most days after school, Marisol rode her bike down the old irrigation trails to clear her head. She loved that place, said it felt like stepping back in time. She left home one July evening just before sunset, telling her mom she'd be back before dark. The last anyone saw of her was a neighbor who waved at her as she pedaled down the hill. Marisol never came home. The next morning, search parties fanned out across the groves. Her bike was found lying on its side in the dirt, its back wheel slowly spinning. There were no skid marks, no torn clothing, no signs of a struggle. It looked like she had simply vanished into the trees. Police treated it like a runaway at first, then like a kidnapping. But they found nothing. Bloodhounds lost the scent near a dried-out irrigation ditch. No witnesses, no suspects. Her family put up flyers and held candlelight vigils. Months passed, then years. People moved on. But the grove didn't. In 1999, a young couple exploring an abandoned citrus packing house near the Grove reported something strange. The building had been closed since the early 80s, boarded up and forgotten. They slipped in through a broken window, exploring the graffiti-covered halls with flashlights. That's when they heard crying. Faint and distant. A girl's voice, they swore. Soft and choked, like someone trapped in the walls. They followed the sound to the basement, where they found an old nail driven into a wooden support beam. Stuck to it was a water-damaged Polaroid photo. It showed a teenage girl, eyes wide with terror, mouth open mid-scream, standing in what looked like the orange grove. Her clothes matched what Marisol had been wearing when she disappeared. The photo was turned over to the police, but it led nowhere. No fingerprints, no signs of tampering. And that basement, according to city records, had been sealed shut for over 15 years. Nobody could explain how the photo got there. After that, more stories started coming out. A groundskeeper working near the grove claimed he saw a girl standing among the trees just after sundown. She wasn't moving. Her face was pale and hollow, her hair hanging wet and tangled around her shoulders. He called out to her, but she didn't respond. She just stared. When he took a step closer, she vanished behind the tree trunks like smoke. Another man, a retired firefighter, said he heard a bicycle bell ringing outside his house late one night, the metallic ding-ding echoing through the dark. He lived alone at the edge of the grove. When he looked out the window, he saw no bike, no rider, just the orange trees swaying gently in a wind he couldn't feel. In 2005, a group of teenagers dared each other to camp out in the grove. Most of them laughed it off as urban legend, but one girl came back shaken and nearly mute. She wouldn't talk for 2 days. When she finally did, all she said was, "She's still out there. She's under the ground." Her mouth was full of oranges. The girl was taken for psychiatric evaluation. She moved away shortly after and never returned to Redlands. Years went by. Developers bought the land in 2010, hoping to clear the trees and build luxury homes. But during excavation, workers began unearthing bones, small bones, a child's rib, a fragment of a skull. Everything was halted, and the site was quietly fenced off. Officially, it was labeled as environmentally protected, but everyone knew the truth. You don't dig up cursed ground, you leave it alone. Some say Marisol was taken by someone human, abducted and murdered, buried under the orange trees. Others believe something older and darker lives in those groves, a presence that watches and waits, something that didn't like being disturbed. Locals whisper that the land is cursed, that it was sacred long before Redlands ever existed. Maybe Marisol crossed a line that day. Maybe she saw something she wasn't meant to. Even now, if you drive past the grove at night, you might see something between the trees, a flicker of movement, a pale face, or hear the soft, lonely ring of a bicycle bell in the dark. And if you're really unlucky, you might see her, the girl with dirt on her skin, orange peels in her mouth, and eyes that never stop screaming. She never made it home, but she never really left either. Back in 1991, Claudette Sorensen worked the graveyard shift at a half-dead gas station just off Highway 111, a few miles north of Bombay Beach. The place had 2 flickering pumps, a busted ice machine, and a soda fridge that made this low electrical hum, like it was trying to hold its breath and scream at the same time. Her husband had left 2 years earlier, ran off with a girl who did nails at a strip mall in Bakersfield. So Claudette took the night shift without complaint, said she liked the quiet, said it helped her think. That's the kind of thing people say right before something breaks them. It was mid-August, the kind of heat that makes your sweat feel like syrup. and the air was heavy with the sulfur stink of the Salton Sea. Most nights it was dead quiet, just the occasional trucker topping off, or a tweaker drifting through to buy rolling papers and a Mountain Dew. But that night, Claudette heard a sound that didn't belong to any world she'd ever known. It started around 1:15 a.m. She'd just finished mopping near the candy aisle when she heard it. This high-pitched howling, like metal being dragged over metal, or a dozen dogs being tortured inside an oil drum. She froze, mop in hand, and turned toward the glass door. At first, she thought it might be coyotes. They'd come out sometimes, trotting along the road like skinny ghosts, yipping and barking at shadows. But this wasn't yipping. This was screaming. It didn't stop. For 3 hours, that shrieking echoed across the salt flats like it was alive. It didn't change pitch, didn't rise or fall, just kept on, like some broken trumpet of the apocalypse that no one had the good sense to smash. Claudette said the windows rattled, the floor tiles shook, and she swore, on her mother's grave, that she saw movement out near the shoreline. A group of customers trickled in during that stretch, people with wide eyes and dry mouths. One man came in barefoot and shaking, said he saw something standing out there in the moonlight, near the edge of the old marina, where the boats used to dock before the lake turned poisonous. He said it had a face like a horse's skull, empty and grinning, with long legs like stilts and a back that didn't move right. Too many joints, or not enough. He'd pissed himself, didn't even seem to know it. Another woman, local, worked as a part-time waitress in Kneeland, claimed it wasn't standing at all, claimed it was floating a few feet off the ground, bobbing back and forth like it was waiting for something to rise up underneath it. Claudette rang her up for cigarettes and a coffee, and didn't say a word. The next day, the fish started coming. Thousands of them, tilapia mostly, washed up dead along the shore. Fat, sun-bloated bodies packed together like puzzle pieces. Some of them were still twitching, mouths opening and closing like they were trying to scream too. A few birds were scattered among them, pelicans and gulls, stiff and wrong, eyes pecked out. The news called it an algal bloom, toxic runoff, usual cover story. They brought in a couple guys from the University of Riverside, snapped a few photos, poked a stick in the mess, then packed up and left before nightfall. But the locals knew better. The folks who'd lived near Bombay Beach long enough, they'd seen the way the sea changed, how it turned from blue to gray, to this slick, rotting silver. How the air got thick and mean some nights, like it wanted to choke you out. They remembered the old boomtown days, beaches, resorts, yachts, and how it all dried up when the water went bad. The Salton Sea had always been a mistake, born from a busted irrigation canal back in 1905. It wasn't supposed to exist. Man tried to tame it, build a paradise on accident, and the earth said no. The shrieking stopped as suddenly as it started, around 4:17 a.m. Claudette remembered the exact time because she'd just poured herself a cup of coffee and nearly dropped it when the noise vanished mid-scream, like someone had yanked the cord out of the sky. The silence afterward was worse. It was thick, like the world had gone deaf. She didn't sleep that day, didn't sleep much after that. 17 years passed before it happened again. In 2008, the shrieking returned. Different night, different weather. January this time, but the same sound, like rust screaming. This time, it lasted only 40 minutes, but the aftermath was the same. Dead fish, twitching birds, and a sky that looked bruised for days. No one wanted to admit it. Some of the younger locals said it was all bullshit, that Claudette and her generation were full of ghost stories and desert rot. But they stayed away from the beach after dark, just the same. Even the meth heads started steering clear of the shoreline once the sun dipped low. There were too many stories. Too many nights where dogs refused to go outside, or radios picked up garbled whispers in languages no one spoke. In 2019, it came back. Claudette had died 2 years prior, lung cancer, slow and mean. But her daughter still lived in the area, running a thrift shop in Salton City. That night, she said the air felt like wet velvet, thick and pressing. She was in bed by 10, like always, with the windows shut tight and the fan humming. At 2:04 a.m., the shrieking began. She said she woke up screaming, though she didn't remember falling asleep. The noise was worse than she'd ever imagined, like it was inside her head, not in her ears, but somewhere behind them. She couldn't cover it. Pillows didn't help. Neither did her hands. So she did the only thing she could think of. She shoved in her earplugs, the ones her mother left behind. They didn't block the noise. Not completely, but they changed it. She said the shrieking stopped sounding like a sound and started sounding like a voice. She won't repeat what it said. To this day, she keeps those earplugs in a drawer by her bed, wrapped in wax paper like relics. And she still wears them most nights, not to block the sound, but to keep it from getting in. There are rumors that the thing, whatever it is, doesn't live in the sea, but under it. That it's not a creature at all, but an echo of something older than water. Something that got buried when the canals broke and the desert flooded. Some say it was put there on purpose. Others say it came there on purpose, drawn to the rot and chemical stink of a man-made mistake. Bombay Beach is mostly empty now. Just a few scattered souls, sunburnt and half-mad. The buildings crumble in slow motion. The art installations grow rusted and surreal. Broken pianos, toilet sculptures, TVs that haven't worked since Clinton was president. Tourists come by sometimes, snapping photos of the decay. They think it's a joke, a cool Instagram spot. They don't hear the shrieking. Not yet. But those who live there, those who remember, know the truth. The thing under the Salton Sea isn't done. It sleeps long and slow, and every few years, it stretches, it remembers, it calls out, and sometimes it listens back. You'll know it when it comes. Your windows will shake, your hair will stand on end, and the air will taste like copper and old oil. Just don't follow the sound. And if you do, God help you, don't look at its face.